And I think I started this program very well by not even playing the music, but here we are anyway.
Great. Thanks, Sweyn. Welcome to this episode of season 4 of the Dr. Tech Show, where myself, Pauline Roche, and Sweyn Hunter, and often guests as we have today, Nish, Doshi, talk about digital topics, including the world of online communications and digital inclusion, in a show which was the brainchild of digital storyteller, the late and much missed John Popham. So let's start with the weather report. Sweyn, how has the weather been where you are this week?
Well, I'm in Orkney as usual in Kirkwall, and the weather today and for the last couple of days has been sunshine and, well, I will not say it's actually warm yet, but it's not cold.
Excellent. And here in Birmingham, it is sunny coming in the window at the moment, which I'm delighted to say. We've had rain during the week, but it's definitely improving. The temperature is definitely improving. And Nish, where are you and how's the weather where you are?
Hello, I'm in Edinburgh and it was sunny. I think it's getting a bit cloudy now, but it was lovely to wake up to.
Very nice, very nice. So we'll come back to you, Nish, and do a proper introduction. But first of all, we'll go through some dates and things we've picked up that to kind of talk about at the beginning of the show. And the first one is actually from last week, but I thought it was worth keeping in. On the 11th of March, 1702, the UK's first daily newspaper hit the streets, called the Daily Courant, or Courant, however it's pronounced in English. It owed its appearance to the fact that control of the press by the government had been abandoned some 5 years earlier. It also owed its existence to a remarkable and determined woman, Elizabeth Mallet, the newspaper's first proprietor and editor. In sharp contrast to today's media, it pledged to give news daily and impartially and allow readers to make up their own opinions. And the quote is, nor will the editor take it upon himself to give any comments or conjectures of his own, but will relate only matter of fact, supposing other people to have sense enough to make reflections for themselves. And we only wish that was true of the press today. But anyway, satisfyingly, the blurb for this goes on to say the paper was published from premises on Fleet Street. This famous London thoroughfare had been the printing industry centre since William Caxton's contemporary Wynkyn de Worde set up business there in 1500. So that's an interesting fact for today. And we also have another fact that happened last week, but I think it's worth mentioning. The first day of Ramadan. Now this is only happens when the UK Moon Sighting Board has met to decide when is the first day of Ramadan. But last week it was in Birmingham anyway. It was decided it was going to be on Tuesday, based on attempts to sight the crescent in the UK. The board said that it was not possible to see the moon at any location and have declared the first day of Ramadan would be Tuesday. So it's customary. The piece from the paper says it's customary to look for the first faint crescent of the new moon on the 29th day of the month of Shaban. If it's seen, that month ends and Ramadan starts the next day. If it's not visible, Shaban goes on to a 30th day, pushing back the start of Ramadan by one day. And moving on to this week, on the 21st of March in 2013, the European Space Agency revealed new data that indicated that the universe is 13.82 billion years old. So I thought our listeners and readers might be interested in that fact. 13.82 billion, that's a lot. Okay, moving on to events, and this is one that's happening actually today, but because I felt it was relevant, we left it in, and it's an introduction to AI, concepts and applications in everyday life, a free workshop for those aged 55 plus. And this is, we saw it on Eventbrite, free workshop. And the blurb says, AI was once a futuristic concept, but is now a tool used globally every day. Embark on a transformative learning experience to demystify AI with EverLearn Campus Introduction to Artificial Intelligence 5-week online workshop. So it's going to be running today and then every week for 5 weeks, where you learn about the daily uses of AI. It's taught by Harvard, Brown, and MIT instructors. And this online workshop, designed for those aged 55 plus, will not only teach you the basics of AI applications, but how to integrate AI into your own daily life. So you can learn and accomplish the basics of machine learning, neural networks, and natural language processing, how to use AI in your everyday life, create creative digital projects with your classmates using the fundamentals of AI, and consider AI's current and potential future applications. So, yeah, I think if I wasn't doing this, I might go. I think it's on at the same time as this program. then I might have signed
I
up for
think it's
that,
later. I think
Sweyn.
it's three. I think it's
Oh, is
between
it?
3 and 4, but it's
Oh,
sold out
great.
anyway now. So
Oh,
good
okay.
time.
It was great to see the interest in
Yes.
it. Yeah, I'd certainly like to know more about it. I know I'm talking about AI every week these days, so it's certainly topical. And it's good to see it for, older people.
Yep.
And then also a date on this week, an event is on the Wednesday, 20th of March, an event called The Social and Cultural Impact of the Internet, a British Perspective. And the speaker is Grant Blank. He's a visitor at the Oxford Internet Institute and senior research fellow of Harris Manchester College, a visitor at the institute, and they're both part of the University of Oxford. He is a sociologist specializing in the social and cultural impact of the internet, the digital divide, which we often talk about, statistical and qualitative methods, and cultural sociology. And this event, it says the presentation will discuss the major internet trends in Britain. It will pay particular attention to emerging stability in a number of online activities. So there we go. Yeah, sounds like another one that would be of interest to many people here. Yeah, I'd like to hear that. I've heard
Yes.
of Grant
Good.
Blank before, but I can't remember
Yes.
where. Okay, so moving on to our very special guest today, we're delighted to be joined by Nish Doshi. They are the network coordinator, Tech for Good Organisers Network, and a community organizer and change maker. And Nish says, "My passion is to fight social justice everywhere with care and compassion. I believe in building community with deep, resilient, and inclusive design to ensure longevity and prevent burnout." Nish says they work towards achieving a fair and socially just society for all through research, building accountability into work, training on social injustice, and community organising. Nish, you're very welcome to the programme. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, welcome to the show. We know each other through some of the networks that that we both participate in. But what was your kind of early life, if you like, on kind of the internet and kind of online communications generally, if you can go that far back? Not that far back with you as for us, but yeah, a bit.
I think compared to people my age, I started a bit later than everyone else because I was living in Kenya. So things were just a bit slower and older technology, still pretty privileged in those places. So we did end up having a home computer. I've been really lucky to have digital access to things for most of my life. But yeah, I think it's just been a life of connecting to people and finding out information through digital spaces. I did get into tech more as like a, everyone in my generation had a live journal was like a big thing. I didn't have one, but I did get into tech through like blogging, but like human life blogging rather than what is now considered blogging. So it feels like seen seen the internet change quite a bit through my growing up stages of life.
Mm.
Um,
What stage of education would you have been when you first started using the internet?
I mean, I remember it was less than 28K, but it was probably about 12 or 13. I think my first email was actually to Bill Clinton through school. It was like, "Hello, this is how you send an email." So, yeah, I don't don't really know what I said, but
Did he respond?
obviously. Um,
So that was something you were encouraged to do at school.
yeah, I can't remember much about it. I just remember I remember it because I actually lived in the States for a bit, and I hated it. And I felt like if I wrote an email to him that was really mean and told him what I really think about the US, I'd get in a lot of trouble. So I was like really nice. That's all I remember.
Yeah. So like, did you have the internet in libraries, or what was your your kind of weekly experience of the internet? What would it have been like?
Um, so we were lucky to have a computer at home. You couldn't always rely on phone lines though, so it was definitely not like if I compare it to the cousins I had based in the UK, and even when we moved to Australia after that, and the kind of level of which people had access to the internet was just not possible in Kenya because the digital infrastructure just was never
Mm.
there.
Mm.
So we would have access to internet, but to be honest, I don't remember using much at all. Like we did have a computer lab, but I think I spent more time playing like games or being forced into like writing school newspaper articles than actually having access to the internet until I was about 13 and we moved to Australia, and then suddenly everyone was like being taught coding and I was really behind and never just always felt like I caught up a bit later in life rather than at that stage.
Mm. Interesting. So, so when you were in Australia, because I remember when COVID happened and people kind of been uh very amazed that we could like learn at a distance and be, sort of not have to be in a classroom anymore. Um, and I remember thinking that I had read about education in Australia years previously and how then people had lived maybe on remote stations and kind of dialed in. So in Australia, it seemed like a very common thing, very, for years. Was that your experience as well, or were you going to school face to face?
I was in a city, so
Yeah.
it was definitely face to face. I'm not really sure about what remote education was like at all, to be honest, other than the divide between Aboriginal ed so-called education systems and
Mm.
the more centralized uh, types.
Can you
Yeah.
say any more about that? Because that's not something I'm familiar with.
I think so. I remember we had to read this book for school, which is called True Country, and it kind of really opened my eye out. It really opened my eyes out to what is education and what is knowledge. And I think it really talks about how the sort of Western education model has been forced upon like loads of communities, but knowledge systems which, like the land without like needing to travel through it to be able to direct yourself through like long like areas of land, being able to move and understand how the world works and the relationships that exist within things. All of those forms of education are just not celebrated enough
Mm,
or like given not considered education, whereas like reading and writing was like the peak of education and
yeah.
knowledge. So and it was sort of that and related to how these systems aren't designed around communities and their cultural relationship
Mm.
to education as well,
Mm,
as well as like poverty and um, like remoteness and inaccessibility and racism.
yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Do you? Because I get the sense these days, just bring it right into the present century, that people are starting to have those glimmers. It feels like those glimmers of awareness that other ways of doing things have value in a way that I didn't know I haven't always heard previously. That like, for example, a lot of charitable organizations, foundations, and so on. Say they won't fund faith faith-based organizations if they proselytize. We're not allowing any merit in the kind of work that faith-based organizations do, including proselytizing, because faith can be a force for good. Um, and just sort of there's barriers, there's been barriers to acknowledging different ways of doing things that maybe things are starting to change slightly now. Do you have any optimism in that field? Because I know that's an area that you have some experience in as well.
I think there's spaces where there is interest in that kind of thing. I think I think the in my view, the world is becoming more and more splintered. So there's avenues where that's true, and there's a lot more engagement in trying to understand what is knowledge and like um I think one of the things that comes up quite a lot is something called epistemic justice, which is basically about who actually whose knowledge is considered knowledge
Mm,
and whose isn't. And I think there is a conversation about that. But I think at the same time, you've got this other whole movement of like oppression and silencing that exists, and what is the right way of doing things. So I feel like there's many worlds, and I feel like that is becoming more and more real as time goes on, because we don't use the same platforms to understand it or get information or like communicate with each other. So I think, yeah, it does exist in some pockets and areas, but not so much in others.
Mm. Mm. Speaking of platforms, going back to your kind of early life on the internet, if you like, were there some platforms that you liked being on and found fellow travelers on, and others not so much?
I just had like a very stereotypical geeky sort of teens of like, writing fan fiction and like fanfiction.net, and like um you know MSN Messenger was a big thing. Yeah, I still remember like ASL is, yeah, and just like those. I feel like it was very stereotypical in that kind of way. There wasn't really anything that I did that was different, other than the fact that I started to learn how to code just to try and like create pretty things on the internet, and then got to the point in my adult life where I was like, everything is over coded. And the fun of like hacking together on like cutting and pasting like sort of tools was has just kind of gone, because everything is like professionalized and fancy and glamorous, and I'm like, I don't that's not even my aesthetic.
Mm.
um
So when you were learning to code, what was your language and what was your experience like?
I mean, it was basically just HTML. Then when CSS came out, I was super excited because I didn't have to hand code everything. Um, and then I did a bit of PHP, and then it kind of slipped away from there. Got distracted by other things.
hmm hmm Do you think that, I mean, I know there was a huge sort of encouragement for younger people at school to learn how to code. My kind of attitude to these days is, well, AI is going to do a lot of that for us, and not everybody needs to learn how to code anyway. It's not the be all and end all. Have you got a view on young people learning to code? Anybody, any age group actually learning to code, good or bad, indifferent?
So I actually disagree with you on the AI is going to do
Me
code
too.
for us. I have to say, I'm not sure AI is going to achieve everything that everyone's saying it's going to achieve. Get based on like all the mistakes that currently exist. Like I have a family friend who we were talking about how you use ChatGPT to code. And he basically said that what he does is he asks something in ChatGPT, copies and pastes it, and then actually corrects it
Mm,
in the actual work. And the correcting actually does take quite a lot of time, just less time than it used to. So
yeah.
I'm not sure. And I think actually, like, I think there's something really interesting about code, because I think you, it's a way of looking at language. It's a language in itself. And
Mhm.
it's a way of looking at the world which kind of puts your brain into specific categories. So learning how to code at younger age helps you speak the language of like how computers work.
Mm,
I keep meeting young people who don't know how things work outside of a platform, and I think that's really sad, because it's like one of the things I did was like I spent a little time working on figuring out how on like some Linux code, and kind of working on yeah, trying to exist within and use Linux. It didn't end up working because I got frustrated with like having to fix everything all the time. But it was interesting because it taught me how these things sort of work, like how to like get something running by just typing in some code instead of and I think that's really important. I think thinking through those sorts of things.
Swain's
I
brought up a
I'm so
cartoon
proud of
and
myself for finding this. I saw this the other day and I thought, will I put this into the grid for Dr. Tech Show? And I thought, well, no, well, yes, no, and I didn't. So the top frame says what we think that the current situation, what the current situation is, that there's a whole pile of complexity and languages and toolkits and so on. And the sad engineers then have to sort through this big pile to make things that are useful, called apps or other usable things. And then what people think AI will do, and I think it's nearly what Pauline said. It's oversimplifying it terribly, and sorry about that. But anyway, and what we have in the middle pane is a picture of happy non-engineers. You and me, we're not engineers, but there's AI, so we've got AI, and then what it shows is that what the AI is doing is it's sorting through a hidden pile of complexity that doesn't matter anymore because AI only needs to see it, and then we get apps out of that. What this cartoon then claims is actually going to happen is that you've still got the sad engineers. You've got a new pile of complexity to do with how you interact with AI and how you prompt properly and pipelines and templates and all those new things that are coming along. And then you've got that going into AI, and then you've got the same old pile of complexity as well, that even sadder engineers are having to have input to, which is what you were suggesting, Nish, where people take the output of AI and they debug it and they make it actually work and, correct the number of fingers that everyone has and all that stuff. And then we get apps as well. So I think I'm not quite as pessimistic as that, but I think that the truth is probably further to that end than the kind of idealistic AI will make it all obsolete. We've been here before. I mean, languages like COBOL and so on were hyped as speak to your computer in natural language. You don't need to learn all this ridiculous machine code and code in every single little number. This is a human language for you to use. And then in the 90s, there was the so-called 3G coding languages like SQL and things like that, which again, you don't need to know all this complicated COBOL that nobody understands anymore. Just do this, and this will write your COBOL for you. And at every stage, there's been an increase in what can be done, but there's certainly not been a decrease in the number of people making it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Yeah.
AI will change that more radically. Who knows? But it's too early.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both of you. I was being a bit flippant in
Of course you
saying
were.
AI is going to sort all this out. I hope all our listeners realize that. But I do think people do think that actually AI is going to be the answer to everything, and that's why I've been reluctant in work and in other settings to promote it too much because people don't have the skills
Yes.
to be able to tell what
No.
works and what doesn't. So,
That's right.
but like you, Nish, I kind of and your colleagues, I would use ChatGPT to draft something and then correct it. So yes, everybody out
I
there
think
who's just using ChatGPT willy-nilly, don't do that. Okay,
no.
just be mindful.
I think it's.
I actually,
I think that the sorry, just one more thing. The payoff is where we get more for the same amount of effort, or we get the same stuff for a bit less effort. But it's. I think it's quite important to not underestimate what that effort is going to be. Sorry, Nish, I interrupted you.
Go ahead,
no,
Nish.
I was just going to say I don't actually use ChatGPT much at all. I mean, I've just played around with it to experiment with it rather than used it on a daily basis because I feel like it loses the humanity of like writing something. Like I usually use it to write something, and I feel like it changes my tone to say something I'm not trying to say. And especially like being autistic, it's kind of like I spent so much time trying to pick the right words which exactly explain what I'm trying to say, and then ChatGPT kind of puts a whole level of language on top of it, which I'm like, that's not what I mean.
No.
Can you be more precise? And I think there's also the fact that I kind of know the political complications of AI itself. For example, with ChatGPT, following some of the stuff around Kenyan workers who were told to label all of the and tag the different processes within the AI, within the development of the AI at very low wages and without any form of emotional support, and the sort of globalization of like those sorts of tools and technologies. So we only see the side of it, which is like, this is amazing, rather than like, actually, this stuff is still being built by humans because we still need humans to pass that information. It's not just like magical technology, which you can just create. It still takes like people working behind the scenes. And I think that in itself is kind of something I remember a lot, and why I'm still kind of at the stage of like, I'm really reluctant to I really see the importance of automation and all these processes, and I know that AI is much more than like what we think, like what is called AI right now. But I think it's just like I I'm aware of the impact that tech is already having on the world, that I'd like to see more of those sorts of conversations coming out of these like digital and AI for good spaces, than just like the AI utopianism
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
And
sometimes.
again, that's been a common theme in every generation of technology since the 18th century. It's focusing on the good parts of a new thing and not properly accounting for either the effects on people producing them, which is what you were suggesting there about the people behind the AI tagging, or indeed the negative effects of something that produces something good as well. So you can go back as far in time as you like. I'll work up an example about the wheel one day, just to have a even
comparison. So Nish, in your experience and in your kind of the networks that you move in now, who do you think is doing good work on AI, on kind of leading AI, so that social justice, underpinning?
I think there, gosh, distributed AI, like artificial. I can't remember what it stands for. I'm sorry, I'm really bad at this. But
what was the
there,
acronym?
Dare, did
D,
you say?
yeah, DAIR, particularly following Timnit Gebru's work, has been really powerful. I think there's a lot, basically, I think there's a lot of Black women leading on this, because of the kind of issue around surveillance technologies being proportionally like racist, and Black women needing to exist in these spaces to challenge this stuff because it is directly affecting them and their communities. So
Mm.
I think the power is really in those sorts of conversations and spaces. I think there's also things like Design Justice Network, which is doing some really like powerful work, which doesn't entirely um, affect. I think I don't know if it's. I think that's like their. Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure.
I've maybe got the wrong page. I'm not sure. Don't let
Well, we
me
can we
don't let
can
me distract you with
we can hopefully
the
get the right
messages
one and
here.
put
Just
it
ignore
up on
them.
the YouTube
Yeah.
page afterwards. But yeah, I think it's important for us to seek out the ones that make sense to us, because John Popham, who founded this show, would have wanted the work that would have wanted anything that we were kind of talking about and promoting to be, you know, based on social justice, because for him there was no
Absolutely.
point in having big corporates setting the tone, because they just don't understand what it's like for people at a very grassroots level to have to live in this world. So yeah, any kind of leads like that, we can follow up, Nish. We'd be really pleased to have them.
I'll write a list and share it maybe.
Great.
That'd be good.
That'd be great. That'd
Uh,
be great. Yeah.
I think there's been a couple of so Catalyst just produced a tech justice report,
Mm.
which might be worth sharing as well. It
Mm-hmm.
specifically goes around. It looks at things like surveillance technologies. So I think there's bits and pieces coming out of the um, sort of uh, I can't think of the right words now. But there are like little pockets of greatness. I've also
Mm.
been thinking with the latest thing around Diane Abbott facing really horrifically racist comments.
Yeah.
I've also been looking at Glitch quite a bit on like
Mm.
online
Yeah.
harassment.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of that, which is like the daily experience of people using the internet that kind of gets forgotten. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I did approach the woman from Glitch to come on the show, but she hasn't been able to. She's been so busy. But yeah, we kind of we noted that when she started publishing. Um, she's done a brilliant book, hasn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I haven't read it.
yeah, yeah. It's good to note these things, because not everybody um sees these things, that we kind of consider it our part of our job is to kind of bring these things to the fore and mention what might be useful to people to kind of catch up on. So Nish, back to your kind of career and life and stuff. You've had various roles in various what look like social justice organizations, or largely social justice has been underpinning a lot of the work that you've done. Has that come from, what was that? Why did you decide to work at the places that you worked in?
So, ironically, I did an archaeology university degree, which I
Hmm.
loved, but also didn't end up following. I think I got a bit distracted by the need for tackling like bigger issues that I felt were disproportionately affecting people who look like me, who come from other parts of the world. And um, I think just social justice is just the sort of thing like that I've always had. It's always been innate in
Mm.
in myself. Like I've never understood. One of the things that I always used to ask when I was a kid was like, why do some people get paid more than others? And I know that's the most Marxist thing to say in the world, but wasn't coming from a Marxist perspective at the time. But I was just like, I didn't understand why some things are more valuable than others. And I think that's just never changed. It's like, why do some lives matter more than others?
Yeah.
And I think that's at the heart of it, is like, how do we build a world where all of us are treated in the ways we want to
Mm.
be treated?
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, looking at your LinkedIn profile and the jobs that you've done, including some in libraries, I'm pleased to see. They're like a textbook nearly. Leading towards the work that you do today, because you were doing work on um, uh, Friends of the Earth, economic justice, stop climate chaos, and so on. Long before it was as popular as it is now. I'm sure you've seen huge changes in that over the years.
yeah, good and bad in terms of that organizing. It's been really nice to see the shift towards climate justice. So a lot of the climate change stuff I was doing right at the beginning felt really dry because it was very much focused around like how do we reduce carbon emissions, and how do we like do credits work, and sort of financialization towards understanding that this stuff comes from a legacy and history of like fossil fuel economies, which themselves are built around coloniality. And if you understand why colonialism happened, it was always about stealing resources, and you can't disconnect it from that. And so I think,
Mm.
yeah, I think it's been interesting to see that shift happen. In relation to tech and climate, it's kind of funny because I see like one side of it where everyone's like, technology is going to save climate, and make us have like a future that's gonna actually exist, and the other side, which is like all of the technology is destroying the planet, especially AI. So it's kind of a mixed bag of really interesting groups of people.
Yes.
But I don't know. It's grown into something that is more and more pertinent. But yeah, I definitely, I felt like over time, my experience of it has been like learning that everything is interconnected and more interconnected. So it's kind of been like, I don't like, this is why if you look at my LinkedIn profile, my like job sort of history is like so diverse in many ways, is because I'm like, I don't understand where things like pigeonholing myself in a specific expertise would never help me understand the many different holistic aspects of like
Mm.
why the world the way it is, which is basically what I spend all my time thinking about.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're amongst friends here.
Absolutely.
And I would look at I look at your LinkedIn profile and say, here's an early textbook, not textbook, but guide to sort of the kind of things that you could or should get involved in if you really want to be effective in the world that we have today and make change, which is what you're saying. And exactly what you said about the kind of contradiction between wanting people to have access to technology so they can have better lives, but knowing that the use of that technology is going to damage the planet. And I was just presenting at a launch event for a report on digital inclusion in Birmingham recently, and one of my questions to the panel was about, how can we encourage people to use the internet while also paying attention to the fact of the amount of consumption it takes up, and the damage that it's doing. So have it, use data, yes, but use it mindfully. Can we use a bit less? It's like typical sort of using assets. Can we do more for less? Can we get as good a result or as nearly as good result, but use a bit less resources? And what do you see as the main challenges, Nish, now? And what, if you were kind of in charge, what kind of changes would you be encouraging people to make?
In charge of what exactly?
The world, the digital world, the world
Uh,
in AI and internet and so on.
there's a great series of blogs written by Rosanna Diaz, which I was lucky to be a part of, which is called Life Affirming Technology, and it's written through like community tech. And there's a great manifesto in that I could pull up and find. But yeah, basically I think that's a really good starting point. I don't feel like I would ever want to be in charge of everything. I think I'd always want to try and create spaces for people to exist, to be able to like I'd love to see tech designed for people rather than for
Mm.
like yeah, I guess like one of the things I've been doing is reading about the military industrial complex and technology, because this is the exciting stuff that I like do in my spare time. But I guess, yeah, like I've been thinking a lot around like tech investment, and especially with the Tech for Good Organisers network, because I've been trying to find sponsors for our work.
Mm,
And the more I look into it, I'm like, but I can't find anything that's actually for good that would sponsor us.
mm,
Like it's kind of really hard to see technology and development that isn't funded by military or in the sort of
Mm.
dual use kind of way,
right.
um or like even like accessibility tech. In one of my friends' workplaces, like they got Otter AI put on all the Zoom calls, and
Mm.
then they realized that HR was using it to surveil them and go through
Oh,
their calls and their transcripts to
Of
make sure
course they
that.
were.
And
Oh
it's like
dear.
that was a tool that was implemented because someone had gone, I don't understand. I need to have captions to follow the conversation. So it's sort of, I don't know where I started with this, but I guess I've been thinking a lot around like how can we build technology for us rather
yeah,
than like for the mass murder of people.
Mm.
Um,
yeah, yeah. Which, yeah, you've referred to the Tech for Good Organisers network. Not a lot of people will know what that is. Do you want to kind of explain what it is and what the work that is that we're trying to do together?
yeah, I mean, Pauline, you might have a better understanding of it because you were right there from the beginning. But it is like it's basically a network for people who do any form of tech for good organizing. So if you run a community that roughly fits into the definition of tech for the good of the people and planet, then you're one of us. It's a network. It's kind of a very relaxed network. It's not specifically formal. We have a meetup every month online, and we also have two like biannual conferences. The next one's on the 20th of April. They're actually run as unconferences,
Mm.
and they're like a great opportunity to just meet a lot of people and be really inspired. I mean, Pauline, how has your experience been of the Tech for Good Organisers network as someone who founded it?
Well, I mean, I was very honored really to be part of kind of a network of people who cared as much about technology as I do, and or more in some cases, and were able to kind of put that into practice. It's been wonderful to kind of know that there are people up and down the country, in England, in Wales, Scotland, in Ireland, who in Northern Ireland, who want to use technology for social good and who are working towards that end. Some of them in like much more advanced than I have been, because my kind of early work was with the TechSoup Net Squared network, and going from doing organizing meetups in the Impact Hub Birmingham as it was then, where we had speakers on things like agile and using technology for volunteering, that sort of thing, sort of some very basic ideas, to the kind of thing that people like Annie Legg and Ed Superior and Ariel Rai are doing, or just using technology in a whole world way, is very, for me, it's kind of, I feel very, kind of low down on the ladder, if there is a ladder of superiority for tech for good. But it's good to be realizing other people are coming along as well, because I think sometimes in this world, you can feel a bit isolated and feel like you're the only one doing something, and that if you stop, then the whole world will come to an end, and nothing will happen. Well, of course, that's not true. There are so many people out there now doing such great things, and we regularly pick up on this show stories of greatness that are happening, and we can go back to them again and again. But certainly, the network has been a place where I think I've found solace in knowing that what I'm trying to do is what other people are trying to do as well. That other people support me and kind of believe in me. And I hope others have found that as well. We've been able to bring, with the retreats, we've been able to bring new people on board as well, and sort of, even if they don't come back the next time, we hope that they've learned something good from the time they've spent with us. And people like Ross McCullough, was doing amazing things with tech, even before lockdown in Scotland, and now I think more people in the rest of the UK know about the great work that Third Sector Lab does. So it's good to give people a platform for what they're doing. The Tech for Good Southwest is relaunched with a great fanfare. Annie Legg and colleagues have been doing great work down there. They ran the Bath Digital Festival a few years ago that I went to speak at. And just great to see people going from strength to strength. Sorry, I'm taking over the presentation, Nish, now, but yeah, it has been. It's a great network to be part of.
I think one of the things about Tech for Good that strikes me is that it's great that the concept exists and that the principles and the spirit of it exist, because it's a way of counterbalancing tech for, as you say, either killing people or tech for making things ruthlessly more efficient in a monetary sense, and I think that just the concept of focusing on that positive side of things is great, because not very many people have very much money or very much time available to effectively promote that side of technology. A lot of what's promoted at us is definitely not entirely for our own good.
Mm. And Nish, you've, with the experience you've had, I have to say you've brought great awareness and insight and wisdom to the whole network. And I don't think we could have had from doing it ourselves. So thank you for everything that you've done. What do you feel of your accomplishments been in the network?
So I think it's been really nice to have those in-person retreats. So we've had two which have been open to like anyone who wants to join, really, and each has been really different. One of them was in London, one of them was in Manchester, and it's kind of interesting to see the vibe change, because there's a very different vibe at each. And it's just been, I feel like the work I've done has kind of curated those spaces, and it's really beautiful when people leave spaces going, I feel really inspired, or I think that's it. I think at the end of the day, I just want to have I want to see other people's joy, and that's the center of the work that I'm trying to do. There's obviously always learning curves. I still think there's a real need for us to engage in the groups that don't exist in our spaces a bit more. So the people who are tackling, as I say, things like social justice issues within tech, I feel like need to be more prevalent in the Tech for Good space. But yeah, I think it's been a journey with some of the most beautiful people I've ever met. There's just so much care and kindness that exists within the network that I feel really privileged to be part of. But yeah, come along to our next retreat on the 20th. Even if you run a podcast or run this sort of a video vlog, yeah, it counts. I believe it counts as creating a community. So
absolutely. So have you got a new I know that you're still involved with the network, but you also have other strings to your bow. What are the other strings that give you joy in your daily work?
Um, well, one of the things was with you, Pauline. Just a few, like last year, we had this really beautiful opportunity of curating a space for disabled people who care about social justice in general, but specifically like environmental justice, to kind of meet each other and be fully human with each other. So it's just gathering spaces online. And it was really interesting to try and experiment to create a space that's online that actually doesn't feel like your soul is being sucked away. Because I think a lot of like digital hangouts can be a bit like, oh, I feel really drained by this. I think the idea behind it was creating a space where people would come out feeling empowered and feeling connected and feeling wholesome and being able to, especially disabled people, being able to walk into a space and be like, I'm not going to be on the screen. I'm going to be like lying in bed and I might only communicate through chat, and that being completely okay. And that kind of culture of like being able to be yourself in that kind of digital space was so important. And that I think that was the most fun thing I've done in a really long time. Like it was just such a beautiful way of seeing like people really deeply connecting, which I think is really missing from a lot of our cultures and communities where we, you'll be like, let's have a coffee, and then like that's the idea of your entire connection. Whereas like this was really going into like quite deep things about each other. So that was really, really joyful, and I'm really glad you were a part of that experience as well, Pauline.
Yeah, it was very enjoyable to be, because that's not a part of my identity that I get much chance to celebrate and kind of to work on, really, because there just aren't those spaces, and the fact that you were curating it with other people, gave me confidence that it would be a good space to be. It's great to, I hope you know that you inspire that confidence in people to kind of say, I think you're one of those people, that this is my experience of you anyway, that if you're organizing something, then it's going to be a good thing. It's going to be something to be involved in, not putting all the responsibility on your shoulders, but just to say, this is something I can give some time to, because the person organizing it has thought well about what needs to happen and what needs to not happen, and that they will work hard to make sure that I have a good experience and that other people, have a good experience. So yeah, I think that certainly would put that on your resume. So thank you
Oh,
for that. Yeah,
thank you,
it
Pauline.
was
That's
really
really
good.
sweet.
Yeah. Well, I think we
Yeah.
need to stick up for each other and sort of, when there are those people out there, to celebrate each other in those spaces.
But likewise, I feel sorry. I'm just gonna jump it. Sorry, I don't know you enough, Sven, but I'm just gonna go in straight into like a bit of love for Pauline because, uh, first, I think you underestimate yourself often, because I've never like whenever I think of digital inclusion, you're literally the first person who comes to mind because you're so connected. You know everyone. You always know what's going
Absolutely. This is
on,
so true.
and you inspire people. Like I've seen like I literally go into LinkedIn sometimes and just follow you just because I'm just going to see a whole deluge of like really loving, kind comments to people, which you don't really see. Like I used to be a huge fan of Twitter before the Musk days, and it was just about everyone putting down like each other down, really. And it was nice to see the alternative exist within like the way Pauline works in the world. And also you just seem so aware of all the different complexities. You seem to have an innate understanding of intersectionality. It's just like I just think that it would. I just like really appreciate working with you, and every time I've been in a space with you, I'm like, yes, Pauline's here.
That's
Everyone
that's
should know Pauline.
That's really good to hear, because I did have I have had a reputation. I think hope I still have it, of if somebody's about to say something that's not acceptable these days, they look around themselves and say, "Oh God, Pauline's not here," because they wouldn't say it if they were around me. And that has actually been said to me. Once actually in front of me by somebody who didn't know me but had heard about me from somebody else. But anyway, that's
That's
another
hilarious.
story. But it's good. It's
That's
good to
very
have that
funny.
reputation. I want to be the person that makes a difference. And is prepared to stand up and be counted. We need more of those people in the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And
and John
John,
again was
John, as
John
we always
Popham
say,
was
yeah.
one of
Did you know
those.
John Nish?
No, I
No.
never
Okay.
had the
No. No.
opportunity.
No, it's he was a great guy, and he was so straightforward, and there was no kind of overblown theoretical construct for most of what he did. He was very good at taking all of this complexity and sort of narrowing it down to one human message that actually made a positive difference either to a group or to humanity in general. He was great.
Yeah.
He was really great. Yeah.
Yep. And it's good to I mean, I'm also standing on the shoulders of giants, Imi Core, Lorna Prescott, Paul Webster, people I've met online first. They all have given me inspiration. And you give me inspiration, Nish, as well, and you, Sweyn, as well. We've all it's a bit of love in here now, but it's kind of you just go where the energy is, don't you? I remember doing a recording for the Impact Hub Birmingham when it was first starting, and they were asking people, why they went there, and it was because the energy was there. It attracted good people, so good calls to good, I think, in the world, which is great. So there is still great goodness out there, and certainly the Tech for Good network, Organisers network, lays that out completely, obviously, and brings people together. I mean, there's other great people I'd like to mention as well. Tom French and Tom Watson doing great work around data. I know you've got some experience with the Data Collective, Nish. Can you just tell us briefly what that's about and what if you think people should get involved in that or in this sector?
Yeah, I think if you work in the charity sector and you work with data in any form, which is basically everyone, the Data Collective was designed to help people and do a bit of peer learning in like what to kind of understand how to use data in the sector. Because I think my experience of it was basically that so many organizations have no idea how to manage data at all. There's no spaces for upskilling, there's no funding for doing the data work. You spend hours and hours around just trying to figure out what CRM to use. And you end up being forced into something because it's free rather than it's the right choice for you. So I think there's a big need for the charity sector to understand data, especially as it's becoming more and more a tool that's used to kind of manage people and used to kind of figure out how to advertise to us better. But I think it's just really important that the sector comes to understand the power of data to do good as well. I think that's what the heart of the sort of organization that kind of holds the Data Collective, DataKind, really tries to emphasize is that data can make impact, like make your organization more impactful. And the Data Collective's there to support anyone who works with data in the sector. But it is a peer learning network. So it's not like, I think a lot of people come to want immediate answers and solutions to their problems. And most of the time the question back is, hey, like, where does data fit within your whole organizational structure? And people are like, can you just tell me what to do? And unfortunately, that's not how these things work. And I think that's the same with digital. Like, I actually don't know where the line is between data and digital anymore. But yeah, I think it's such a powerful and important collective and community. Sad to leave it, but had other things I needed to do with life as well. So
yeah, sure. Yeah, I'd certainly encourage people to get involved in that and go to things like the data dives that DataKind organize. I think a lot of people still feel that they, if they haven't got coding skills, that it's not appropriate for them. Really, I had as much fun. I'm not a coder, so I had as much fun being a knowledge matter expert at those events from a charity point of view. And I think I made a difference there. So I would encourage people to go to them. We're going to be running out of time shortly, Nish. So I just want to mention a few things that I actually haven't put on the grid, Sweyn. So I'm sorry about this, but on Thursday, Charity Digital are doing a session. I think it's you have to pay for the sessions, but Transform and Thrive, again looking at AI in the sector. So it's well worth having a look at those. I'm just looking through my diary now. People do say to me I have a great diary. Third Sector Lab is doing a session for digital trustees, a matchmaking session on the 28th of March. And this is something I'm particularly keen in, and I kind of encourage people through my work at Digital NNS. We had a session, we ran a webinar for the neighbourhood network schemes in Birmingham for some of those colleagues to look at what digital trustees do and how they might be useful. So there's actually a matchmaking session, as I say, on 28th of March, 10 to half 11, that Third Sector Lab is running, where you can kind of hear more about that and sort of maybe even find a digital trustee that you could recruit for your organisation. So highly recommend those. I'm mentioning those because we're actually going to be off air for the next few weeks with holidays and various things happening. So in fact, we're not back on air now until the 15th of April.
That's right.
So there is going to be a bit of a gap. So hopefully people can pick up on those various things. I've actually got another charity digital webinar on AI and digital inclusion on the 11th of April. So look on the charity digital website for that. Yeah, so Nish, if people want to contact you outside of this program, where's the best place to look for you?
LinkedIn is probably the best place, but I'm not very good at checking it regularly, I have to admit. But I'll usually be like, hey, can you like email me and give them an email address? I don't really want to share that openly.
No.
Yeah.
But it used to be Twitter, but I'm definitely not on Twitter anymore. So LinkedIn's probably the best. I think that my profile's already been shared.
Go on.
I also wanted to highlight the charity digital skills report that is now open for people to fill out.
Absolutely. What can you tell us about that?
I mean, I'm not obviously part of it, but it is a great and really important sort of survey that's done every year with all the different charities to understand what the where the sector's at digitally and what support, and it helps inform what funders understand about the sector. I know that Zoe and Nissa, who run it, are very keen on ensuring that it has inclusion at the heart of it. So I think they've put a lot of effort into so last year they had a really big focus on looking at organizations that are Black-led to kind of understand the complexities and differences that exist between different types of organizations across the UK. There's a lot of care put in. I know Zoe puts way too many hours into it and doesn't get paid for all of them because she's fabulous. And so definitely, I think it's a really, really important survey. So if you have the time and you work at a charity, please do fill it out. And once the results come out, it's so informative. I definitely felt like I learned a lot each time the findings come out.
Completely agree. And I would say anybody in a charity who is interested in digital and even if they're not sure what their plans are, what they can do, would find benefit from filling in the survey, because it asks questions of you that you can then take back to your organization and say, oh, I've been asked about this. What do you think? And I think it actually, so it's twofold. I think it gives a response to what your charity looks like, but it also gives you inspiration about what you could do with the various technologies. So I would certainly encourage people to fill it in. And I know that they want a good spread from around the regions as well. I think people in London maybe feel more disposed towards filling it in, but it actually is important, really important, to get the regional picture. And I'm sure you would agree with that, Sweyn, that Scotland has done some great work on digital, but the more we can do, the better to get the information out there. Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a few minutes, Nish, at the end. Is there anything coming up else that you'd like to share with our listeners, or any kind of final philosophical thoughts you've got about what's going to be happening in the next year? Because we're not going to even predict 5 years now. It's too unpredictable.
I just think that the key thing sitting with me is just the need for us to understand digital security on an individual basis is what I'm feeling a lot more recently. I won't expand on that because I don't want to go on a political sort of rampage here. So just leave it at that.
Yeah, definitely. I think people still are a bit need a bit more help with their online identity and as organizations and as individuals. I think some charities think that they're not going to be targeted because they're so small, but in fact it's because they're vulnerable that makes them targets. And I think we only need to be picking up on that and trying to make sure that we aren't vulnerable, because we have information, data about vulnerable people, and we don't want that to fall into the wrong hands. Okay, bit of a somber note to end on, but thanks a million for joining us, Nish. That was really fascinating, and we will be putting that out link out on the usual channels to platforms to our listeners and speakers. And when we're back on Hope Radio, I think we will in Birmingham, we will run this show to kind of bring your word to people in the West Midlands area as
absolutely.
well. Yeah, great. Thanks again for joining us, and
Thank
see you
you.
again soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Have a good week.
Bye.